for 11 o'clock. We are starting a new series today, and this is a series about SETAs, the Sector Education and Training Authorities. These are statutory bodies that were established under the Skills Development Act, and they're meant to facilitate skills development within specific economic sectors. I've decided we must do this because that's where bursaries are. We're in a country where the rate of unemployment is just staggering. The numbers are shocking. We have a lot of people that also do not have skills, and that's why you've got statutory bodies like this that are able to assist with funding for learnerships, bursaries, for training and skills development programs as well. I think in total, if I'm not mistaken, we have about 21 SETAs, and I want us to cover all of them because they cover the spectrum of our economy. And the whole idea is to develop skills which are key to unlocking individual potential, career advancement, and fueling economic growth. So how much do we actually know about SETAs? Are they playing the role they should be playing to support government with skills development and even with job creation? Are they adequately addressing our national skills deficit to meet the needs of our economy? And I want you to share your experiences with us. If you have interacted with any of the SETAs, have you been a beneficiary? Number one, how was your experience? Have you tried to access their programs and maybe you failed, maybe you succeeded? Whatever experience you have, just give us a call on 011-883-0702. You can send us a WhatsApp voice note as well on 072-702-1702. Today we start with Merseta, which encompasses training in the manufacturing and engineering sectors. And the acting CEO at Merseta is Naphtaly Mokgotsane, who's joining us now in studio. Mr. Mokgotsane, thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning to you and the listeners. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Let's maybe start with just what this particular SETA, Merseta, is all about. Which areas does it cover?
Okay, thank you. The Merseta, as you've explained, it's one of the 21 SETAs. We are manufacturing, engineering, and related services. So this includes your auto manufacturers as a subsector. We then have the motor and retail. So this is the aftercare of vehicles. We then have the plastics manufacturing, any product manufactured through plastic. We also have the metal engineering, anything manufactured using metal. It will be part of our subsector. Then we also have the new tire. All the companies that make vehicle tires. It's part of our subsector. And lastly, your components manufacturing. You do find a lot of components made that go into cars or any other item that is related, that is Merseta.
Okay. And what's your responsibility as Merseta?
We are established through Skills Development Act. So we take our mandate from the Act itself and taking care of skills development in our sector, manufacturing and engineering. So mainly we are looking at the workers, upskilling the workers to ensure that they get the skills that will allow them to make the company productive and therefore, increase the economic returns of the company. We are also trying to facilitate the training of the, pool of unemployed to make them ready for employability. That's where we then focus on the unemployed by getting them trained, either using, learnerships, skills programs, apprenticeships, work experience, internships, and so on to get them to be employable. As you've also mentioned, we do offer bursaries because some of the programs are formal programs that are either offered at a higher education institution or a TVET college.
Okay. And how do you go about finding these people to upskill, to give bursaries? Is it people who apply? Do you have programs where you go to schools for those that are matriculants? How does it work?
Okay, thank you. What we do, because we are responsible for a sector, so in our sector, we have these companies that, according to their classification, belong to us. Then we obviously solicit participation from them. It's a voluntary kind of participation. We'll advertise, especially where we are using the funding to sort of leverage that angle. We solicit them to apply for funding. Then once they apply, then it will be the responsibility of the company to get these people on board to then benefit from the skills development programs. It is also informed by what the sector skills plan is telling us, to say there is a need in the following area in terms of what the companies say they do need skills that are in demand, and therefore there has to be an alignment in the programs that we would want to fund through the grant system to the demand of the company. So usually your individuals wouldn't necessarily be eligible to apply for any assistance from a SETA, except in a sense where they've already been contracted on a program, and therefore because they are registered with us as learners, beneficiaries, then that's when we'll then engage with them.
Okay, and then when it comes to bursaries, then how does it work?
Currently, we have entities that apply for bursaries, where they will then get the either matriculants or post-matriculants to apply for bursaries. So we have a project that we're running with the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS. Why NSFAS? It's because they already do have a pool of applicants, but our focus is mainly on the missing middle. Missing middle being the ones that do not meet the demand, in terms of the threshold of NSFAS in terms of the funding because of the household income being higher than the threshold. So we have a project to take care of that. And secondly, it will be any other university that would have applied for funding saying we've got students who need bursaries. So anybody who's interested to get a bursary, they'll have to work through the university, provided we already have an agreement with them, or alternatively to apply to NSFAS. We at the moment do not have, that provision for individuals to apply directly, but it's something that we're thinking of for future.
How much money are we talking about here? As SETAs, for you as Merseta, for instance, what's your budget annually?
Our annual budget is in the region of 1.4 billion.
Okay.
That's the annual budget, roundabout. So now, obviously, because the funded entities would have an agreement with us, so monies would be committed, then we'll on an annual basis, facilitate whatever the deliverables of the agreement are in the continuous funding on an annual basis.
Okay. So obviously, at the end of the day, what we want to see here is just enhancing skills development and training, and ultimately or consequently helping with job creation, so that there's also an impact on our economy. Do you think that that's the kind of impact SETAs have? And you can speak specifically about your own SETA or just broadly. Is that the impact that we're seeing? So these monies that are budgeted for at SETAs, are we actually seeing the practical effect of this investment?
Thank you for the question.
Because there's so many people that are still unemployed.
Yes. In a way, I'll talk of Merseta, that we have in the system over 50,000 active learners. There are obviously some programs wouldn't last a year. It will be 4 years, like apprenticeships as an example. Same with bursaries. They'll do a 3 or 4 year program. So they will be in our system. And therefore, because we are continually supporting them, we do traceability or tracer studies on a twice in a 4 year period to try and see whether there has been an impact. So there is an impact. However, it may not be something that is seen, because each SETA will only look at its sector versus what the needs are. We also seeing that because of the population growth, it's very difficult. Even if the impact will have a reference to the number of people being trained, but the question is, versus the population growth, does that make a dent? So it's something that we we worried about, especially considering the youth unemployment. We've seen a lot of youth who are not in employment, not in education and training. So that is our main focus as a SETA, to make sure that we get them. Because once the youth is out there unemployed and hungry, things will go wrong. So we'd want to really focus on them as Merseta.
Okay, let's talk about some of the skills, because you are in manufacturing and engineering as Merseta. Which skills do you think are lurking in this sector, and how are you preparing for the skills of the future, particularly in for instance, when you look at this sector that is becoming so automated? You look at the motor sector, for instance, as well. What's the plan? Do we need to start shifting just the priorities and where the investments are being made so that we get people ready for the jobs of the future?
Definitely. And we are making that shift. From our determination of priority occupations, we have found that, we still lack industrial engineers. And why industrial engineers? The automation that happens in the manufacturing companies really need somebody who is well astute with the fourth industrial revolution and therefore understand the whole industrial engineering. So we've picked up that it's a priority. We've also picked up that because our sector has got a lot of products being produced, so the sales skills related to those products, because so often you can't sell something you don't understand. So it has to be in the context of the product that is being manufactured. So sales has been one of our priority. Mechanical engineers, definitely. And then the other category is on trades. We've seen electricians, welders, millwrights, fitter and tanners, diesel mechanics, boiler makers, and automotive motor mechanics being one of the priorities for Merseta. Now, in gearing ourselves, because obviously we've seen the auto sector, reducing the number of employees because of automation, because of fourth industrial revolution. So we have started, because, TVET colleges are accessible. We can always rely on your employer-based skills development centers. So we really rely on our public college system. So we support a lot of TVET colleges towards, gearing themselves to offer the right skills, fourth industrial revolution. So we are partnering with a couple of TVET colleges, therefore equipping their facilities with the fourth industrial revolution kind of skills. So we are getting there. And secondly, with the TVET colleges, because they usually would have a campus, even in a township. So we are really supporting them to upgrade their equipment to the level of the skills needs that we have in our sector.
All right. I want the listeners to just come in with some of their inputs and questions. I've got some calls coming through. 011-883-0702. You can also call us. If maybe you are in the automotive sector, in manufacturing, in engineering, in related services, what's been your experience? We're talking about SETAs. It's part of our brand new series. I want us to focus on all the SETAs and look at what impact we have seen. There's a lot of investment that goes and a lot of money that gets to the SETAs. We still have so many people that don't have the necessary skills, that are not employed. So how do we maximize on these resources and the investment so that the SETAs, we start seeing the practical effect also on the ground? You can send us your WhatsApps as well on 0727021702. I'll start with those after this, so we can hear from the callers. Vusi, thank you for calling. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for this great opportunity. Number one, I'd just like to highlight that most of the programs by Merseta, they are entrenching and bedding one of the representative white organization called Retail Motor Industry, RMI, for many years, which is a buffer for black emerging or existing automotive entrepreneurs in our townships to access opportunities like trainings. Recently, last year, there was a over 37 million training project, which we wanted our black township entrepreneurs to access to the RMI, but we were denied that opportunity. They said it's only for the white members who are affiliated to them. Secondly, we've got an organization called TAXA. We've been struggling to partner with Merseta because we want to make sure, especially the cohort of our black unemployed TVET graduates each and every year who are just piling up at home with N6 automotive grades, doing nothing. So we've been battling with Merseta to partner so that we can be able to make sure that with our program of establishing in our township the new energy vehicle economy, so that they can be able to get employment and then jobs and also own that economy.
Got it. Vusi, thank you for calling us in Mapetla. I'll get Mr. Mokgotsane to respond to that. Chris, you're calling us from Springs. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Clement, and compliment of the season, although it's almost 2 weeks, and a big up to several prime media executives, including yourself and your team, to make such interventions in trying to alleviate the challenges facing employment or unemployment in South Africa. Very quickly, Clement, if possible, I would like to ask your guest if an NGO that deals with the upskill of young kids within the township, and that NGO would like to partner with them in identifying young kids with potential and being recommended to be trained in as far as different disciplines. And also, I hear he's talking about engineering, which is quite exciting, as well as about the fourth industrial revolution. Much is not being talked about the plastic industry at Clement. There's so many jobs and opportunities available within the plastic industry. There's one institution, I think he can actually vouch me on that, in Midrand called Plastic Federation, which in fact it has partnered with your different companies like your VW, Toyota, etc. But I think more needs to be done so that we can expose these young kids about opportunities available within the Plastic Federation, because we know that in secondary schools there is no more what we call career guidance as we used to have. So these kids, in fact, are not privy to such opportunities. And if possible, can I have his email address, if it is possible?
All right, Chris, got you. Chris in Springs, thank you. Mr. Mokgotsane, you can respond to what Chris is saying there about the partnership with NGOs and these opportunities that exist in the plastics industry. And you heard what Vusi said there about some companies or maybe SETAs that prioritize companies which are predominantly white. And his experience is that there's some, black young people that have been excluded.
Okay. Thank you. I would, RMI is obviously an association of employers, and I would not want to talk on their behalf. I will speak to Merseta. Merseta as a public entity. When we solicit applications, it's open to everybody. And obviously our priority is informed by the National Skills Development Plan. So it is aimed at those, people that he referred to. And if he made a proposal, I'm not sure if it was to RMI or to Merseta, but I would really encourage him to consider. We have a funding window open currently. It's closing on the 31st of January. And, if he has a proposal, I would really plead with him to apply online and put a proposal online. The Merseta will consider it in line with our internal processes and policies. So we would not really talk much about RMI. And the question from Chris, in one of our priority areas, or what we call performance indicators, we do support the NGOs, CBOs, and so on. So if they do have a proposal, once more the funding window is open for him to submit. Plastics is one of our subsectors. As I would have mentioned at the beginning, that anything manufactured with plastic is part of our subsector, and we do support anything that has to do with the plastic. And I think the new thinking now is also to do with the recycling, because a used up plastic that's, thrown out irresponsibly is a problem. So, the recycling also is one of the elements that Plastics South Africa, that's the organization you mentioned, that is also looking at. So we are open to suggestions. If you would like to email me, the email is ceo@merseta.org.za. ceo@merseta.org.za.
.org.za. Here's some of the WhatsApp voice notes that have come through.
Clement, please ask your guest if they are working with private universities or colleges, because I hear him talking about NSFAS. NSFAS is for government institutions. Please ask him about private colleges and how can we go about applying.
Good morning, Clement and your guest today. Look, Clement, I used to work for a manufacturing company which manufactured catalysts. Now that company closed doors in South Africa. So some of us have been unemployed for quite some time now. So I don't know, is there anything that Merseta can do for people like myself? Thank you very much.
Good morning, Clement. Regarding the SETA skills that the employer gets the grants from the government, the problem is the employer, they control those funds. I mean, in South Africa, 90% of those funds, they don't end up to the beneficiaries they intended to. Instead, the companies, they use those funds to run the operation of the business. And we've witnessed that for several years now. So now I think that the government, they need to have intervention in terms of to mitigate such constraints, because I mean, they apply, they get the funds, but none of the people get the funds to get developed and get skills. Thank you. Joseph Anonymous.
Okay. Thank you for Joseph Anonymous. Okay, it's 2 minutes before 11 o'clock. Mr. Mokgotsane, I just want to take the news. When we come back, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to some of these questions. I've got just 2 or 3 more that have come through also on the WhatsApp line before we release you. After 11 o'clock, welcome to the third and final hour of the Clement Manyathela Show. I want to go straight to the conversation that we started in the previous half hour about Merseta. It's part of a series that we're starting this morning about SETAs, the Sector Education and Training Authorities. But today we started with Merseta, and Naphtaly Mokgotsane is the Acting Chief Executive Officer. So before we get into our Family Matters feature, I just want to give him an opportunity to respond to some of the questions that came through before the news at 11 o'clock. And Mr. Mokgotsane, the 3 of the questions, one was about private colleges. There was a second one about companies not using the funds they get from SETAs to run, they're using those funds to run the operations of their businesses. On the WhatsApp line, someone wants to know about private companies like SMEs. How do they partner with SETA? What are the requirements if they want to access some of that funding?
Okay. Thank you for the questions from listeners. When we solicit applications for grants funding, it's open to public entities, private entities. This includes your higher education institutions, which could be private or public. So we do not necessarily work with the public only when it comes to bursary funding. What should be noted is, the beneficiaries of bursaries should be the deserving students, in a sense that it's somebody, whom, if we were to do a means test, will pass it to a point, because obviously we do not want to give bursaries to people who do not really need it, because the family background is fine for the parents to support them. So we are open to that. This includes your private skills development providers or any other private institution, be it higher or lower. The matter about the manufacturing of catalytic converters where the company closed down. That's what I understood. What we usually solicit from our companies is if they are going into retrenchment. We have a program called Retrenchment Assistance Program. So should the company go under, at that time, they will be allowed to make an application for consideration, because obviously there will be evidence of why the company is going under, that we would really consider favorably to make sure that the people who are now will become jobless at least do get some skill to maybe move into other industries or subsectors. So, however, because I think we're talking history now, this has gone through and it's gone and dusted. I'm not sure if, I would really urge the caller to go to our website and find the information around our advert for funding. Maybe there is something that will link to what he now wants to do following the closing down of the company. The last question from Anonymous, we give, it's a grant, so we give it to a company. Now, if a company were to take a learner on a learnership, they will be expected to pay them stipends in accordance with a minimum wage. And therefore, our grant often doesn't cover the full cost that the company will incur in training a learner. So therefore, it will be expected that they would use their money to pay for the training cost, to pay the learner stipends, and any other, personal protective equipment needed, they need to fund. So the learner must be well sorted from the company's coffers. Now, what comes from a SETA is just a discretionary grant to sort of supplement whatever they are doing. We have two types of grants, the mandatory grants. So the mandatory grant is informed by the portion that the company has paid to a SETA through the skills development levy contribution. Now, that also has a criteria. The company would be expected to have submitted a workplace skills plan to say, I have employees, this is my plan, to train them. And after submitting the skills plan of the following year and annual training report of the previous year, then we then measure it against the past submission. And if it meets criteria, then they will get that mandatory grants back. So there is some evidence that the company presents that will then inform the payment of the grants. Then the second grant is the discretionary grants. Based on, how we fund employers or anybody who applied and secured the funding, we sign an agreement. An agreement has got defined deliverables. So the money will flow based on deliverables. And often we would not, for an example, there's also an argument that to train an apprentice, it costs over 400,000. However, our grant is a mere 206, 290, 206,290. So now people will say it's not enough to train an apprentice for a full duration of the program. So we wouldn't really say, what did you do with our grant? But the criteria would be whatever we spelled out in our funding agreement has to be met, and we verify it accordingly.
Okay. Let me just wrap up with these messages. Shafiq says, Clement, the problem with SETAs is that workers are having to fund skills development for the unemployed when government should ultimately be responsible. Also, many SMEs feel that SETAs have become a money-making sector and are not providing real skills that result in real jobs. What's your guest's take on that? Another one says, Clement, can Merseta certify a student who participated in the program while at university doing their engineering practice program? That's the next question. I'll wrap up with this one from Teslem in Johannesburg, who says, brilliant choice today with the SETAs. SETAs are crucial to human capital development in South Africa, given our history and also the need to build a sustainable economy. SETAs are structured to focus on skills within different economic sectors of South Africa. However, SETAs require a broad array of stakeholders to function properly. That's just a comment there from Teslem in Johannesburg. You can just respond quickly to those two questions.
Okay, thank you. I think the first comment on the scheme of SETAs, As I've said, the grant would usually not even cover the expense that is incurred in the training. So that's why we really do mention it's a grant. And I don't see anybody making money out of it, to an extent that the listener is suggesting. So the unemployed, is our priority, and therefore we'd want them to be properly skilled so that they become economically active, and through either self-employment or employment in a formal. SETAs do issue certificates on skills programs. So these are short programs that are made up of unit standards and also the learnerships. That's a full certificate. Now, if a learner is at the university and during that period they do work integrated learning, so that is part of the program of the university. It will be certified by the university. For example, work integrated learning, it's part of a program that says, after you've done your, theory-based training in a university, you have to be exposed to some work integrated. That's where it becomes part of the certification that is issued by the university.
Okay.
SETAs issue our own programs.
Yeah, just lastly, how are you managing also the money as Merseta? Because I would imagine you're also governed by the Public Finance Management Act. And I know that you're acting in this position because your predecessor, is it Wayne Adams, was suspended. Has that disciplinary inquiry against him been completed? And how do you ensure that as Merseta that you use the funds for what they're intended for and we don't see corruption?
Okay. Yes, you are correct. We are governed by Public Finance Management Act, and therefore we account as such. So the monies that obviously we manage as a SETA, gets audited by the Auditor General of South Africa.
And she wasn't happy the last time.
Yes, you are correct. It's something that we are working on. But we still account for the monies that we as a SETA do get. Thank you.
Okay, and how are you accounting, though, for what the concerns that the Auditor General has raised about your finances? Because she was citing systematic inefficiencies and repeated compliance failures. I think there was an instance where there were cases where Merseta funded learners multiple times, or learners were recorded in multiple SETAs. I mean, that's a glaring inefficiency.
Yeah, on the last point, there are 21 SETAs. There's a high possibility of a learner being funded by one SETA in the same year. They complete a program, go to another SETA, get funding from another SETA, and so on and so on. We don't have an integrated system as SETAs. However, there is something that is being worked on to make sure that there is an integrated system for SETAs to see if learners are, being funded by different or same SETAs or, at the same time. So there is something that we do. Internal, issues that were picked up in the audit, we are really working on them. Obviously as part of the process of the external audit, then it will include, an action plan being put in place, and then the Auditor General will then come and monitor or do a preliminary audit to ensure that it is adequate. So
all right. Naphtaly Mokgotsane, Acting Chief Executive Officer at Merseta.